Hi, I'm Jackson Crawford. The ancient Greeks had Achilles. The medieval Norse had Sigurður Faulknesbani. And for a generation of men born west of the Missouri, we had Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday. So I want to take a moment to reflect on the occasion of Val Kilmer's death on something that I think is a really underappreciated shaping cultural force in America today, and that is the character of Doc Holliday as portrayed by him in Tombstone. I remember uh, I had such a burst of joy when I finally had the perfect opportunity in context to say, "That's Latin, darling." Um, and I'll probably remember it for the rest of my life because it was so satisfying. Um, but there's probably not a single day when I and my friends and brother don't quote this movie. Uh, you know, well, bye, or must be a peach of a hand, or, of course, everybody says, I'm your huckleberry, which I think maybe he was originally supposed to have been saying hucklebearer, but that's a debate as old as this movie. Uh, or, it changed our vocabulary, right? I think that people out here say crawfish because of that movie. Um, we talk about street howitzers and smoke wagons because of that movie. Um, it changed our grooming and clothing choices, right? I think we all wanted to look as cool as the guys in those movies. I know that all of us, at some point after we had started being able to grow facial hair, tried to pull off the Royale. 98% of the time unsuccessfully. And it changed what we name our kids, right? I don't know any Wyatts born before 1993. After 1993, it's which Wyatt. But it's really noticeable that we name our kids Wyatt, but we ourselves find something much cooler to imitate and allude to in Doc Holliday. The character of Wyatt Earp in the movie is, too much of a good guy to be cool in the same way. Now, that's very different from the real historical Wyatt Earp, who was a bandit at the same time that he was a lawman in Tombstone. But in the movie, he's the lawful good guy. And while we aspire to that for, our children and maybe our uh, most venerated historical figures, we don't recognize ourselves in that, right? We see ourselves as the complex beings that people are, tempted to bad, uh, but also trying to, to do something good and honorable. And Doc Holliday is that with impeccable style and a wonderful tongue-in-cheek humor the whole way through, right? Um, he's, and I think this really gets at what made Tombstone such a defining um, piece of visual literature for my generation. He is the cool 90s guy in late 19th century guys, right? He has that sarcastic commentary sense of humor, right? He has the Mystery Science Theater or Riff Tracks humor. Um, he's got the kind of hopeless attitude toward the future, right? There's always the whiskey or the cigarette at his lip. He's always ready to jump into danger just for the kicks, just to feel alive, because we can see that he's not going to last. And I think that uh, a lot of the every generation struggles with its mortality in different ways. I think that for our generation growing up, probably to a certain extent, there was that kind of like, what am I going to do with my life, right? Everything has been done, all the old jobs being replaced. Nothing that I do seems to succeed in the way that my parents and grandparents maybe did, seemingly more effortlessly, if not really more effortlessly. Um, and I think that we saw in Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp in that movie something of what we wanted to make of our lives, right? We wanted the excuse for the awesome rampage of revenge. And, we wanted to fall in love in a spectacular fashion and then either have money fall out of the sky. Um, it's all right, Wyatt. My parents are rich. Or we wanted to die like Doc Holliday, laughing at the fact that we didn't have our boots on. Um, and, and quote unquote, in our prime, another expression that I think we probably use every day or every other day in tribute to him. Uh, this movie, it's the reason that I think my generation got into or back into Westerns, because as little kids, our grandparents watched Westerns and that wasn't cool, right? We didn't really care about Bonanza. And if we came to appreciate the Magnificent Seven or the Outlaw Josie Wales or the Searchers later, it was because Tombstone, in being, again, that 90s movie in late 19th century garb, made those things approachable, made them cool, right? It put a cowboy hat on our Havana shirts, and I think that was crucial in the shaping of my generation. Again, and look at the effects. Again, just the radical proliferation of the name Wyatt in the Western United States. To a lesser extent, the proliferation of the names Morgan and Virgil. I always hoped that once I got my PhD, people would start calling me Doc, and it didn't happen. But it was always a secret disappointment. Look at I swear to God, I can go to the 3 nearest towns, and I can tell you exactly which shops, because it's most of them have "I'm your Huckleberry" shirts, right? For some, and who knows why, except that people just said, "Oh, this is cool. This evokes the coolness of this Western man that we aspire to." And I think also that Doc Holliday, being such a distinctively Southern character, is actually part of the reason why Southern features have begun creeping into Western American English more lately. Not that I think Doc Holliday in the movie ever says y'all, but I feel like the expansion of y'all into the Western United States, as well as some phonological features, people saying night instead of night and things like that, actually come from people wanting to evoke the cool southernness of Doc Holliday. Um, I know that when people play poker, they sit around and they start talking more Southern, and I think that's because it's, there, now we can be friends again, right? I think that they're evoking that. Certainly, it's one of my go-to, um, you know, uh, characters to sort of put on in joking around with friends and family, and the accent is a big part of that. This movie was just inescapable, and we wanted to be this guy. We wanted to live that way. I know that uh, you know, here's another thing that I think is different between Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. Kind of the same way. So, I was definitely one of the sort of loser kids, um, unsurprisingly. And, I think that Wyatt Earp seems a little bit more like, the athlete kid in a way. He might grow up to be someone that's admired, but there's always kind of that sense of like, yeah, those kids that were successful and liked, those are the same ones that beat me up in middle school or whatever. Um, Whereas Doc Holliday seemed to sort of embrace his loserness in a way, right? You could kind of see him as a loser who, by sheer force of will, made good, right? He ignored his, he could be called lunger, but he was still going to outdraw you. And I think that inspired, uh, to a certain extent, a generation of men to aspire to the same arts, right? I mean, and oddly enough, I don't think any of us became, speaking of just my friend and family group, any of us became big gamblers, but we certainly play poker among each other. But then again, that may be a tribute to Doc Holliday, who says, "I said poker's an honest trade. Only suckers buck the tiger. The odds are all in the house." So we didn't flock to the casinos in Black Hawk or Central City or Cripple Creek. We just played poker among ourselves, where we could joke and quote Tombstone. And personally, there's nothing that I'm better at. My number one skill is Old Norse inflections, and my number two skill is drilling bullseye at 25 yards with a pistol with iron sights. It's not just Tombstone that made me think that was a cool hobby, but it probably started me down that way. And I can't say nothing of just the way this movie has absolutely changed our vocabulary. So my heart goes out to Val Kilmer's family. I guess I would tell them that in the role of Doc Holliday, he will always be the cool uncle to a generation of nephews in the American West. Well, to everyone who took a few minutes to listen to my reflections here, thank you. And from beautiful Colorado, I'm wishing you all the best.